Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I know it's hard to watch like a training video. It's a lot different than being here in person and getting to interact with us. But since you weren't able to be here in person, I'm really glad that I can just provide this option for you, just so that I can make sure your files are complete in terms of having gone through this training. So thank you for taking the time to listen and watch through this with us. So I hope this is helpful and encouraging for you. We met here on Sunday for our Plan to Protect training, and I just wanted to share a really quick verse. It's from Proverbs chapter 11, verse 25. It says, "A generous person will prosper, and whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." And I guess I just want to thank you for stepping up and being a volunteer, being someone who's willing to offer refreshing and encouragement to others in our church family. I really appreciate, and especially our kids and our young families. I want to thank you for giving of your time and energy to serve in kids ministry. I'm so thankful for you, and without volunteers like you willing to give and pour yourself out into these little ones, it wouldn't happen. And so thank you for being a part of the team, I guess is just what I want to say. Why do we do this? Well, it's really important to have plans. I don't want to just throw you volunteers in there and not give you any training or any guidance and direction. And when you don't have any planning, there tends to be chaos. And so by just talking about how we have a plan to keep kids safe and just talking about why it's important to keep our kids, our volunteers, and the church as a whole a safe place, it just will help us to do things well and do it with excellence. So it's really important to have a plan. And especially now in these times we're in. Hey, the big elephant in the room, which is not a quiet elephant, it's just there. It's this reality that COVID has come, and it has been here for a while. We haven't done kids ministry in person for a long time, and now we've started to again, and that's super exciting, but it has implications for how we do things and how we keep kids safe and you guys safe as leaders. And so, yeah, things have changed. Things are different. And so we need to talk through some of those realities of what's happening now. And so my goal in walking through this material is, just to kind of make sure you've got a bit of a framework of understanding for how and why we're doing certain things. So if you have that little sheet, I sent you guys the handout from our session. So if you want to just have that out as I'm just talking here and just walk through filling in the blanks with me as I talk, that would be great. And then I'll get that handout back from you. Just then I know you've gone through the material, and I can put that into your file. So what is Plan to Protect? Plan to Protect, it's a plan that's in place. Where are we here? Here we go. A plan in place to assist our local church leaders and volunteers in having clear policies and procedures that will help to protect our children, our youth, the vulnerable, our ministry personnel, that's you, and our church. We so much want this to be a place that is safe and where all people can come and they can learn, they can laugh, they can love, and they can be loved. Unfortunately, there's times where kids and students here in church settings can end up getting hurt through the words and the actions of people who are in positions of trust and power. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that this is a safe space. I really love Micah chapter 6, verse 8. It really frames so well my mindset in approaching ministry to children. Micah 6:8 says, "O people, the Lord has told you what is good. What does he require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Those three things really quick. The first thing, we have a responsibility to act justly and do what is right. We need to work towards justice and to speak out on behalf of the vulnerable. And guess what? Our kids are some of the most vulnerable among us. And so this is so important. Secondly, we want to love mercy. We want to extend compassion and care, and that's our primary motivation. We're not just kind of covering our bases. I'm not just doing this training just so that I can put in your file that you've done this, so that we've got our bases covered in case something happens and the insurance company comes calling or whatever. We're not just covering our bases so we don't get sued. We're doing this because we love and care about kids, and we want to do everything we can to extend the best love, compassion, and mercy towards them and their families. And then the second thing in Micah 6:8 there, it's walking humbly with our God. Part of being humble is being honest and recognizing sometimes when you don't have all your bases covered. And so our highest priority is to make sure that every child that comes through is safe. And so if there's blind spots, and so for you, as you're watching this, we talked a little bit here when we met in person, just, and I said, hey, if there's ever times where you're seeing something that you're concerned about, or you're not sure about something, or, well, I'm not sure about this situation, how should I be doing this or doing that? Please let me know. I want to know about any blind spots so that we can correct our course and make sure that everyone is safe and being cared for, especially these little ones who are made in God's image. All right, so here's a few basic principles of supervision that guide us. Just really straightforward things, but things we need to be aware of. As risk increases, supervision should also increase. So I gave the example of a couple of different scenarios. Scenario one is, me doing a game outside out on the grass behind the church, and there's 15 kids, and there's people in their backyards walking around and walking by who can see me. That's situation number one. Situation number two is I'm volunteering in the toddler room, and there's only one child who's shown up for the service. Which situation has greater risk? Well, obviously it's the one where it's just me and the one toddler. I've got to make sure I've got things in place to make sure that there's good supervision in place that doesn't include just me. There's greater risk when there's less accountability. So the two main factors that kind of come into play as we plan out all of our programs here is that with isolation, that risk increases as isolation increases. So the number of people, the location, the time of the activity, those are things that affect the risk. So we want to do everything we can to reduce isolation. And our goal is always to increase visibility. And an example is the toddler room on Sundays. So because of the challenge of getting lots of volunteers right now, the realities of COVID, there's times where we may only have one person scheduled in the toddler room, but that's why we always make sure that right next door, and with the doors open, and we got a door with a window, we've got a big window in the nursery or in the toddler room there. We want to make sure that we always have other volunteers right next door, so you're not really by yourself with a child. And so accountability. As accountability decreases, the risk increases. So accountability simply means being held responsible for your actions. So whenever you can increase accountability, increase visibility, we need to be doing that. That's the bottom line. I shared how when I was a camp director at a Bible camp in Saskatchewan, I told my camp counselors, hey, if you're in a cabin with some of your kids and two of the kids leave and it's just you and one kid and you're having a really good chat, make sure that you just say in that moment, hey, why don't we just go outside and we'll sit at the picnic table while we continue talking. This is awesome. I'm loving talking with you. Let's just head outside. So it's not just you and the child alone in your cabin. So whenever you can do things that help increase accountability and visibility and reduce isolation, we want to be doing those things. And generally, we have no problem doing that in our context with what we're doing with our programs right now. So we try to really follow that 2 adult rule is really important, or the 2 leader rule, because not all of you are adults who are volunteering. But especially in those higher risk settings. So remember, higher risk is where there's higher isolation. So use common sense. Don't put yourself in a situation where you are isolated and alone with a child with no visibility and no accountability. So that's really important. Something that we do to help keep our kids safe is screening our volunteers. So you guys who are serving, safety through screening. So this is why we do this training. We have you fill out application forms. Those of you who are adults, we make sure you have a criminal record check on file, one that we do every few years. In fact, there may be a couple of you watching this who I'm going to follow up with you because I need to get your record check updated. So we do screening. That's one of the things we do. Also, we make sure that we've got proper arrival and dismissal procedures. So just a reminder for what we're currently doing here on Sunday mornings. Parents are checking their kids in before the services start out in the foyer. So we've got our RSVP church list where parents are pre-registering their kids. And so we have those lists, and so parents should be kind of checking in there at the door, and then we make note of who is here. For you as a leader, making sure that you are in your space before the kids arrive, that you're getting your space prepared, that you've got everything ready to go. Those of you who are volunteering in the toddler room, so if you can be in the toddler room about 10 minutes before the service starts, that is great, and there'll be a Power Kids volunteer for sure, or your volunteer scheduled with you who is there, so it's not just you alone. And for Power Kids volunteers, if you can make sure you've got your space ready, and then we'll meet the kids at the back once we dismiss the kids at the announcement time, and then we'll walk together with the kids back to the kids wing. But just making sure you're ready ahead of time is really important. What else? Yeah, making sure the kids have their name tags. So I'm still getting some things ironed out with our name tags. I was having some problems with the printer, but generally kids will always have name tags on. So that will be a help for you as teachers, just knowing what kids' names are. I always start my session with the older kids, just going around, because usually it's always a different group of kids who don't know each other. So we always introduce ourselves. Hey, what's everyone's name? What grade are you in? What's the favorite thing that you love to do? Something like that. And then at dismissal time, we're releasing kids to their parents. So, we don't have a lot of kids right now, and so we're just having parents come down into the kids wing. We release the kids to them, obviously making sure that the kids are going with their correct parent or guardian. We did have little codes that matched up with their name tags, like with a number on it. Something that we for sure would want to do if we had a lot of kids and we didn't know who anybody was. Right now, we're not doing that. But I think one thing we will do is if the number is increased to the point where we don't want people bottlenecking in the hallways, with COVID and trying to maintain distances, if we find that we're getting a crowd of people, of parents coming, and it's lots of overlap, we may look at just asking parents to line up outside the kids' wing door, and then we'll have the parents come in one at a time to get their kids, head out, and then have another parent come in. But right now, we're just letting parents come in at the end of the service. They come to the kids' wing. Oh, hey, there's so-and-so's parents. Okay, you can head out now, kids. And we're just doing it that way. So safety through proper volunteer-child ratios. I'm going to just skip quickly through this. You can just fill this in. So 1 ministry personnel for every 3 infants. Our infant nursery is just available for moms on a self-serve basis, so we don't have it staffed with volunteers, but if we did, we'd want to make sure there was 1 volunteer for every 3 infants, 1 volunteer for every 4 to 5 toddlers, 1 volunteer for every 7 to 10 kids, ages JK to grade 5. And the goal is to have about a 4 to 5 year gap between volunteers and the kids that they serve. So you want to make sure, now for the youth helpers, as long as we've got an adult leader, like an older leader who's at least about 4 years older, we obviously will have younger students who are also helping that might be within that 4-year gap. But the main thing is to make sure that there's at least a 4-year gap between the main leader and the kids that they're serving. Let's talk quickly about safety through appropriate affection and discipline. Now, just a little asterisk beside this. This is COVID, and we're, the general guideline is, hey, it's like absolutely no touch. Well, and like no physical contact. And I guess I kind of talked with our volunteers about this the other day. This is generally our guideline, but at the same time, I think we're trying to be, we want to be really safe, and we want to make sure we're maintaining distances and those things, but at the same time, we don't want to be so rigid that we're not we're just like, no, you have to stay in your box, and no, I can't ever just give you like a little fist bump or a little pat on the back, pat on the shoulder. I guess I'm just saying, use real common sense. I mean, the reality is, parents who are having their kids come now to Power Kids are really excited that their kids are getting to come and begin to experience some normal connection and fun and time with other children. I'm just trying to find the balance between, you know, keeping kids safe, but still just having fun and letting kids be kids. So, yeah, so I guess we want to be safe, but we want to also not be super rigid. What's appropriate touch? You know, bending down to a child's eye level, taking a child's hand, putting your arm around their shoulder, gently patting them on the head, the shoulder, or back to comfort them. You know, some of these physical things we're definitely doing less right now. I mean, with COVID, we're not making a point of doing a lot of, hey, let me take your hand and I'm going to lead you here. But you know, there may be times where, you know, if a child is really out of control or whatever, where you may need to gently, you know, just take them by the shoulder and say, I need you to really just listen and focus here. You know, the way that you're yelling and screaming or flipping out, you know, like Lisa shared how, you know, one of the toddlers just was like running away and did not want to be there, and like she had to physically take the child and kind of bring him back into the toddler room. There may be a time or two where physical touch and contact is needed, but do it gently and lovingly and carefully. And so I hope that's clear. I guess, you know, when I was doing Power Kids last week, like I was doing a little science experiment, and the kids did come up and they were kind of close, and they were watching. I guess they weren't all totally socially distanced, but we're trying to still just have a bit of normalcy, but yet follow our safety guidelines as best as we can, while still making it seem like, hey, we don't just have our tape squares on the ground and we're saying, no, you can't leave out of that box. I had a kid this past Sunday he took off his mask and he was using it as a bit of a slingshot, you know, like he was shooting it up and down. And I did say, hey, listen, buddy, I need you to hold on to that, because that's kind of a bit of a distraction. And a part of me was like, oh, I need to tell him, like, put your mask back on. But, well, I don't want to be so rigid that I'm, you know, really obsessing over COVID guidelines, but yet I want them to be safe. So just try to find that good balance of loving and caring, keeping kids safe, you know, sanitizing lots. I mean, that's the thing, you know, if you're doing the odd fist bump or whatever, and then just be like, you know, like I did a little game thing where I was giving everyone a little squirt of sanitizer and they were all, you know, cleaning their hands. Just do your best. So a reminder, inappropriate touch, things like kissing a child, extended hugging, back rubs, massaging, tickling, touching any area that would be covered by a swimsuit, holding a child's face while you're talking to them, definitely don't ever do that. Having older children sit on your lap. So, you know, if you're in the toddler room reading a story, and I think, you know, during COVID, we're trying to not do a lot of the close physical touch stuff, but in particular with older kids, never having them sitting on your lap. I just said, you know, COVID physical contact tips. So yes, the occasional little fist bump, a gentle touch or pat on the back or the shoulders, hey, way to go, you did a great job. I think that's okay. But I mean, crazy horseplay, wrestling, you know, a lot of like, you know, hand holding or things like that, you know, we're trying to avoid kind of extra physical contact. So a little bit is okay. You know, kids aren't experiencing any healthy physical touch. So how do we do that in just little ways that is a gentle encouragement, but still keeping kids safe? So be thinking about that. And did I mention sanitize? Sanitize. Oh, and did I mention sanitize? If you can do that lots, that's great. So just a reminder about discipline. Be proactive rather than reactive. So the more that you can make your expectations really clear, and then just be consistent in following through on the things and expectations you put in place, that's going to really help go a long ways to just helping keep good order in your classroom settings. Safety through proper washroom procedures. So just a reminder, when kids have to go to the washroom in the kids wing, you want to escort or direct the kids to the washroom, but don't go into the washroom with the child. Now, there may be the odd time where, you know, especially a really little one may need some help, and in that situation, you want to make sure that you ask one of the other volunteers. So if you're in the toddler room or the Power Kids room, we always have at least one extra volunteer, and their role is to be that extra helper. Hey, would you mind just coming over for a second? I've got to go in and help little Billy, just get his pants pulled up and his button done up. Make sure that you've got another volunteer who's just there at the door, able to observe while you're helping the child. And that's the second one. If a child needs assistance, have another volunteer present at the door while you assist the child. And nursery babies will always have their diapers changed by their parents. That's something that we're practicing. So a few health and safety guidelines. Some of the things we've been doing is we have smaller class sizes during COVID. So we're having about 6 families in our Power Kids area, 4 kids in the toddler room. But this is a guide, it's not a rule. So that's something I really want to emphasize. The point of having pre-registration and a limit is just that, so we don't have a Sunday right now with COVID where we can't have 18 kids in the Power Kids area or 10 kids in the toddler room. We're trying to create an environment where we can still do a bit of the spacing and not have too many kids. But this is a guide and not a rule. So if there's 6 families registered and 1 extra family shows up with 1 or 2 more kids, well, no problem. I'm gonna for sure say, well, come on and join us, and we'll space it out a little more so that they can be a part of it. If we've got 4 toddler kids signed up and there's a 5th one that just shows up, well, that's okay. But we have that pre-registration in place so that we've got that basic smaller number in place. But that's a guide, not a rule. Leaders, you should wear your masks at all times. So make sure when you're volunteering that you're wearing your mask. And we do ask that kids who are grade 1 and up that they wear their masks at all times. And I mean, most kids are used to this because they're doing it at school already. And so, maybe a gentle reminder here and there, especially if they have their mask, hey, you do have your mask. Let's make sure we remember to keep that on. But then again, I just shared, I didn't make a big point of centering out a child who wasn't wearing it this past week. So I mean, maybe I should have. We do want to try to follow those guidelines as closely as we can, but with gentleness and love and care. Toddler kids, we talked about this one. I said they shouldn't share toys and supplies outside of a family unit as much as possible. And then, one of the volunteers here said, well, that's really hard to do with toddlers. And it is. I think the main thing we want to probably just try to avoid is, if kids are putting things in their mouths, especially, making sure that, that those items are set aside and not shared as well with other kids too, things that are being put in their mouths. The reality is you're going to have a toddler playing with a certain toy and someone else may be like, oh, I'd love to play with that too. And they come over and they want to play with it. I guess, we're not going to be like, no, you can't play with that. I mean, maybe if there's another toy just like it, you can say, oh, I've got this one right here. Here you go. But don't worry too much about being super rigid with this, but especially with things that are going in their mouths. Let's keep those set aside. And at the end of your toddler room time, so toddler room leaders, as much as you can, if you can put toys that have been used onto the table in the room, our custodians will come through and sanitize things at the start of the new week. And they'll also go through and sanitize things like the kitchen that's on the floor, and they're basically doing kind of a clean sweep of the room, but to try to sanitize as much as possible. But if you can put those things that have been used a lot onto the table, they'll make sure that those things get cleaned. And in Power Kids, we're generally trying to make sure we're doing no-touch activities. So as I'm preparing the lessons, some of the games are very interactive with hand-holding and different things. And so I'm making adjustments to the games and things so that there's little or no physical contact directly involved in the games. So try to just follow that as closely as you can as you're doing your planning. Be aware of where the first aid kits are located. Each ministry space has one in the toddler room and in the Power Kids room, the infant nursery. There is a first aid kit in each of those spaces. In the Power Kids room, it's in the rolling cart, right up at that wooden kind of rolling desk thing. It's in there. In the toddler room, it's just inside the door on that little wooden cabinet. And in the infant nursery, it's on the wall just inside the door. If a child is injured, wear gloves while administering first aid. I would say, in particular, if there's any bleeding or blood involved, for sure, make sure you grab a pair of gloves. That would be the main thing I would highlight there. Medications, don't give kids any meds or pills or anything during your time with them in the kids wing, unless parental written permission has been given. So I mean, if there was something where a parent had a certain allergy or whatever it was, and they said, hey, if X and Y happens, here's what you need to do. In most cases, we would just call for the parent right away if there was some sort of thing where medication was involved. So I would say as a general rule, just don't give any medication to kids in our Power Kids times. And then fire or emergency. So if there is an emergency, I will always have a copy of the kids who are registered for toddlers, a written copy of the kids who are signed up for Power Kids. I'll make sure that that is in the kids wing every Sunday, so that if there's a fire emergency and you have to go outside, just grab your list of names, take all the kids, go out far from the building, maybe towards the trees, and then what you want to do is just make sure you've got all of your kids and your list. That list includes the names of the name of the parent that signed them in. And then if there's a fire, you want to stay with the kids until it's safe and you can reconnect the kids with their parents. But head right out that emergency door with your attendance sheet and make sure the kids are safe and far from the building. Safety through reporting. So report it, don't ignore it. So it may come up occasionally. It could happen where a child says, hey, something really hard happened to me, whether it's in the course of your discussion with your lesson or just through a conversation you're having. They share, hey, I've gone through something really hard. If you're a youth, a student leader, make sure that you let the adult leader know soon and at an appropriate time when you can just quietly talk to them about it. Let them know what's happened. If you're an adult leader and a child shares with you that they've been hurt in some way, listen with love and care. Don't try to put words into their mouths or say, oh, are you sure? That didn't really happen, did it? Just listen, love, and care. And then make sure you come talk to myself or Pastor Troy as soon as you can, just so that we can talk through next steps that we may need to take if a child is in an unsafe situation. So there you are. Youth helper, tell your adult ministry lead right away. Adult leader, listen with love and care. Let them share in their own words. Talk to one of the pastors at your earliest convenience. So that's it. The final word is this from Colossians chapter 3, verse 17. Whatever you do, whether in word or in deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. I just pray that in everything that we do with our kids, that we'll do it with love and with care, and that we'll do it in Jesus' name. And we'll do it with thankful hearts. So I'm so thankful for you. Thanks for taking the time to sit through this. I really appreciate it. And I want to pray for you right here in this video before we end, okay? God, thank you so much for the volunteers who are watching this video. Thank you for their faithfulness and willingness to serve. I pray blessing on them as they serve with our children. I pray strength, wisdom, encouragement for them. Thank you for the chance to work together to bless our kids and bless young families in our church and our community, God. And give us a great rest of our day. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much. And if you can, this handout that you filled in the blanks on, if you could write your name in at the top and get that back to me as soon as possible, that would be amazing. And if you have questions about things I've said or I haven't been really clear about anything, just don't hesitate to follow up with me and ask me about those things too, okay? Take care. Thanks.